The sun beat down on the rocky hills of ancient Israel. Goats grazed, their bells tinkling. It was a simple life, but a hard one. The Israelites, God's chosen people, lived under constant threat. Their neighbors, the Philistines, were a fierce and warlike people. They coveted the fertile lands of Israel. Raids and skirmishes were common. A shadow hung over the land. The Israelites longed for peace, but it seemed a distant dream. The Philistines were a formidable foe. They were skilled warriors, armed with iron weapons and chariots. The Israelites, on the other hand, had mostly bronze weapons and relied on their faith in God. Despite the odds, they were determined to defend their homeland. They knew that their survival depended on their courage and their faith. The Philistine army had set up camp in the valley of Elah. Their tents stretched as far as the eye could see. At their head was a giant of a man, Goliath. He stood over 9 feet tall, clad in bronze armor. His spear was like a weaver's beam, and his shield was carried by a man walking before him. Every morning and evening, Goliath would emerge from the Philistine ranks and taunt the Israelites. He challenged them to send out a champion to fight him. "If he be able to fight with me and to kill me," he boomed, "then will we be your servants? But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us." The Israelites were terrified. No one dared to answer Goliath's challenge. King Saul, the tallest man in Israel, was himself afraid. For 40 days, the giant's taunts echoed across the valley, each day chipping away at the Israelites' morale. The soldiers grumbled in fear. Their fear was palpable, a heavy weight that settled over the camp. The situation seemed hopeless. Who could possibly defeat this monstrous Philistine champion? Far from the battlefield, in the town of Bethlehem, a young shepherd named David tended his father's sheep. David was the youngest of 8 sons. He was small in stature, but he was brave and resourceful. He had killed both a lion and a bear that had attacked his flock. David was also a gifted musician. He would often take his lyre and play beautiful melodies that soothed the sheep and calmed his own heart. One day, David's father, Jesse, called him. "David," he said, "take this food to your brothers in Saul's army and see how they fare, and take their pledge." David obeyed his father and set out for the valley of Elah. He had no idea that his life was about to change forever. As he approached the Israelite camp, he could hear the sound of Goliath's booming voice. He was curious to see the giant for himself. David arrived at the camp and rushed to his brothers, eager to hear about the battle. But the scene that greeted him was not one of battle, but of fear and inaction. His brothers, along with the rest of the Israelite army, were cowering in fear of Goliath. David listened in disbelief as Goliath bellowed his daily challenge, his voice full of arrogance and disdain. David's blood began to boil. How could they let this Philistine bully them? Didn't they know that God was on their side? David's oldest brother, Eliab, noticed David's disgust and rebuked him for his presence. "Why camest thou down hither?" Eliab sneered. "And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart. For thou art come down, that thou mightest see the battle." But David refused to be silenced. He knew that someone had to stand up to this giant, and if no one else would, he would. David's words, full of youthful confidence and faith, spread through the camp and eventually reached King Saul. Intrigued, Saul summoned the young shepherd. Saul, weighed down by his crown and the fear that had gripped his heart, looked skeptically at the shepherd boy. "Thou art but a youth," Saul said, "and he a man of war from his youth." But David was undeterred. He recounted how he had killed a lion and a bear while protecting his sheep. "The Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear," David declared, "he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine." Saul, desperate for any glimmer of hope, reluctantly agreed to let David face Goliath. He offered David his own armor, a heavy coat of mail and a bronze helmet. But David refused, finding the armor cumbersome and unfamiliar. "I cannot go with these," David said, "for I have not proved them." He would face Goliath armed only with his shepherd's staff, his sling, and his unwavering faith in God. Section 6. Facing Goliath. David strode confidently towards Goliath, his sling in hand and a pouch full of stones at his side. Goliath, towering over the young shepherd, laughed at the sight. "Am I a dog," he roared, "that thou comest to me with staves? He cursed David by his gods and threatened to feed his flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. But David stood his ground. "Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield," David called back, his voice clear and strong. "But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied." Section 7. A stunning victory. Goliath, enraged, charged at David. David, light on his feet, dodged the giant's attack and reached into his pouch. He selected a smooth stone, placed it in his sling, and whirled it around his head, faster and faster. With a practiced flick of his wrist, he released the stone. It shot through the air with incredible speed and accuracy, finding its mark on Goliath's forehead. The giant, stunned and disoriented, stumbled and fell, his massive body shaking the ground. David, without hesitation, ran towards the fallen giant and with a swift movement, drew Goliath's own sword and used it to cut off his head. Section 8. David's Rise. The Philistines, witnessing the impossible, their champion defeated by a mere shepherd boy, panicked and fled. The Israelites, invigorated by David's courage and their newfound faith, gave chase, routing the Philistine army and securing a decisive victory for Israel. David, the shepherd who had faced down a giant, became an overnight hero. His name was on everyone's lips. He was praised for his bravery, his humility, and his unwavering faith in God. King Saul, recognizing David's courage and the love the people had for him, offered David a position in his court. David, ever humble, accepted, his heart filled with gratitude for the opportunity to serve his king and his people. Section 9. The Underdog's Triumph. David's victory over Goliath is more than just a thrilling story. It's a timeless reminder that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. It's a testament to the power of faith, humility, and the belief in something greater than oneself. David's story teaches us that even the seemingly weakest among us can overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles when armed with courage, determination, and faith. It's a story that continues to resonate across centuries, inspiring us to face our own giants, whatever they may be. For within each of us lies the potential for greatness, the courage to stand up for what we believe in, and the strength to overcome any challenge that comes our way.